That you start your recording. Hi, everyone. So I'm just going to speak to you about something quite interesting with regards to my journey. I'll give you a short introduction about myself in the first few slides. And then I want to tell you about my journey as a pharmacist, particularly because it's quite unique. And also, interestingly enough, it's because there's not many pharmacists in the creator world. And I've got this mission of making a lot more pharmacist content creators. So my plan from today is just to tell you about my journey, and hopefully I can speak to you and hopefully find some little passion that you may have about doing something different with your expertise as a pharmacist. So I'm going to speak about my journey to now having 180,000 followers and how I collaborated, and I'm still collaborating with YouTube as a pharmacist. So let me give you some information about me and my role. So I'm a visiting lecturer, visiting senior lecturer in pharmacy practice. I was a senior lecturer in pharmacy practice. It's only recently become visiting, and that's because I've stepped back from my substantive role just to be a visiting lecturer, just so I can keep up with the content creation side of things. And I'm also an advanced specialist pharmacist in secondary care. So I work as an advanced specialist pharmacist in a condition called interstitial lung disease, which is very rare. Not many people know about it. I didn't know anything about it when I applied for the role, but I knew it's something that I could pick up quickly because of how rare it is. So what I mean by that is I could actually, it doesn't take much for you to know more than your average person or your average pharmacist about the condition. And therefore, in 6 months, I was able to get ahead and have a better understanding of the condition compared to other people. I also work as a visiting lecturer for the postgraduate clinical pharmacy diploma. That includes a few things. It includes marking for the independent prescribing module and the course for De Montfort University. It also includes marking for the antimicrobial resistance module as part of the course. I'm the director and founder of MicroPharm, which is the name of my business. And so far, as part of this business, I've delivered training to over 4,500 trainee pharmacists. Now, a lot of the training that I've done for trainee pharmacists has been for free. And the reason why it was actually sustainable, because I had to bring a lot of external speakers in to deliver a lot of the sessions in areas that I normally don't teach, is because of Locum. So Locum is one of the main sponsors of MicroPharm, and they've really supported, probably, I would say, roughly the teaching of about over 2,000 trainee pharmacists over the past few years. I'm currently the national lead for trainee pharmacists for a company called Morph Training. So if you've got any experience of working in the primary care sector, you'll know about Morph Training, and we currently do a free program with Morph for trainee pharmacists as well. So I guess the first question is anyone here, I'm not expecting a lot of yeses or any yeses, but is anyone here familiar with the work that I do with MicroPharm? Just pop it in the chat. It just gives me an understanding of where people are with what they know. You can say no, by the way. I'm very comfortable with no's. You can even put your mic off if you prefer mic. No.
I would say no.
Okay, don't say sorry. There's no need to say sorry. It's a good thing. It means one more person would be familiar with the work that I do. Okay, so a lot of no's, which is good, because what I want to do is give you a better understanding of the work that I'm doing and how you could probably do something similar to what I'm doing. Okay, so from the title, you must have read the title and you would have thought, someone put their hand up? You're just on mute. Still
I
on
think it may
mute.
have been an accident. Maybe here was it?
Yeah. Okay, still on mute. I think you're trying to get off mute. Mute. So whenever you can, just you can chip in. Not a problem. So you probably saw the title of today's session. Is there anything in particular that interested you, or were you just like, let me just see what this is about? While people are typing, I'm just gonna try and put the lights on. Yeah, let me just see what this is about. Wanting to learn more about what this is about. Okay, absolutely. So in the simplest form of what this is about, I'm a pharmacist. I have a background. I trained in community pharmacy. I spent a lot of my junior years working as a hospital junior pharmacist and locuming on the side. And what I started to do is I started to share the things that I learned on social media, because what I thought there would be an appetite for people to learn about pharmacy online. I used to use a platform called Khan Academy, which is a very well known American resource. Has anyone come across Khan Academy? Maybe your children are familiar with it. So if you have children, check out Khan Academy. There's so much for you to learn. It's a non-profit organization that works in the US, and it's founded by an individual called Salman Khan, and he creates free content to teach children about subjects like maths, science, English. And what he was doing was quite interesting, because he was teaching, there were children with dyslexia that could not grasp concepts at school. And they were watching his videos and saying, for the first time in my life, I actually understand this topic. And then I was actually watching a lot of the videos, and I used to really struggle with textbooks. I hated textbooks. And I really preferred videos. So I used to watch these videos and I used to learn a lot. And I knew there's a lot of resources out there in the medical student world, but there wasn't much out there in terms of the pharmacy world. So what I mean by that is, yes, there's pharmacy education companies that you're probably familiar with, but there was nothing out there online where it was just like free education online with YouTube videos, Instagram posts, and things on TikTok as well, just to teach people who are in the pharmacy world about different topics. So I was like, I'm going to make this and see if it works. So this is where the whole thing started. And what I want to go through is my journey and what made me want to start, like at what point in my career did I want to start, and what did I learn from this entire process, and hopefully you can take some things away from this. So what am I going to go through today? I want you to develop a better understanding of why social media actually matters in the healthcare space. I want you to have an understanding of how to create content. So I'll go through my process of creating content and how to create content that's actually engaging and useful for healthcare professionals and also patients, and also understanding the value of content creators in the healthcare space. And I want to primarily speak about the fact that about a year and a half ago, YouTube reached out to me to call me to an event to say, we've noticed what you're doing and we love what you're doing and we want to give you resources to do more. And meaning we want you to teach you how to create better content and really how to thrive on the platform. And I thought that was quite interesting. And the reason why it was quite interesting is that when they reached out to me, I would assume for YouTube to reach out to you, you'd need millions of followers. I actually only had 4,000 subscribers, and most of those were pharmacy students around the world. So I was like, this is quite interesting. It means that you don't really have to have a huge amount of followers to be noticed by YouTube at the moment. And if you're in, let's say, the gaming space, or if you're in the beauty space, you'd actually need a lot more followers to get the attention of YouTube. So this is saying to me that it's actually a really good time for people to look at different ways where they can educate people online. So this is where everything started. In 2019, I started a role with Kettering General Hospital, and it was my first specialist role. So it was quite interesting because it was my first week for the role, and my manager within the role reached out to the communications team at the hospital and said, I want you to take pictures of the team and showcase what we're doing. And they ended up coming to take pictures during my first week. So it sort of looks like I'm this expert in antimicrobials and also an expert lecturer, but it was my first week on the job and I had no idea what I was doing. So I was quite worried about this role, and I was worried about this role because I was thinking, I've picked lecturing and I've picked being an antimicrobial pharmacist, but I just thought it sounds cool, but I didn't know if I was actually good at lecturing. I had very limited teaching experience at this point, but it was an entry-level role, so I thought it's worth a shot. So I had no idea what I was doing, and I was like, how do I learn the topics? How do I learn about being an antimicrobial pharmacist? How do I learn about the topics that I'm going to teach? And one of the best ways that I learned was by teaching others whilst I was at university. So at university, if I ever wanted to understand a topic well, what I would do is I would actually learn that topic myself and then teach my friends. And that was a great way for me to demonstrate that I've actually learned the topic well. Because when you're teaching other people about a certain topic and you don't know it well, it really shows. So it puts this added pressure that I want to do a really good job of it. So that's what I started to do. And I did it during the start of COVID. So COVID really started a few months after my role, and it meant that everyone was in lockdown. So I was like, I'm in lockdown. I'm going to start making this content that I always wanted to make because I wanted to do something like Khan Academy. But this is the perfect opportunity for it because I've actually got more time at home. So I made an Instagram page, and I thought I'm not going to show my face because I was worried that if I show my face, all my friends will make fun out of me because I've only got a few people that are following me. So I had this idea that I'm going to reach thousands. Once I reach thousands of followers, that's when I'm going to show my face. But I'm just going to teach people online without them knowing that it's me. So I was like, I'm going to be like Batman. I'm going to start teaching people online, and no one's going to actually know who I am. And I actually thought the best way for me to know who I'm teaching was I tried to request every single doctor that used to work with me. I requested them on Instagram with this page, and I was like, I'm hoping they follow me back, and then I'm going to teach them all things microbiology. So that's how it started. And this was my first post. So my first post, I said, I'm going to make one about coronavirus. It was a very easy post to make because it was the start of the pandemic and we actually didn't know anything. So you can see from everything that I'm saying, is there a vaccine for it? No. Is there any treatment for it? No. Are antibiotics effective against it? No. It was just like, it was a very simple post, but I knew that people really cared about what coronavirus meant and how to stop it from spreading. So I thought, let me make a post like this. I shared it on LinkedIn and I also shared it on this Instagram page that I've created. And for what it was, it did quite well. On LinkedIn, it got 24 likes and then it got a few likes on Instagram. Now I look back at this, it looks terrible and it's actually very hard to read. But it was a starting point. And I guess the main learning point from this is it doesn't have to look perfect if you're ever exploring teaching other people about the things that you learn within the job. So I started to take things seriously, and I started to make ebooks for pharmacy students and trainee pharmacists. And these were some of the wonderful reviews that I received. So people are really happy with how I consolidated information from the BNF and made it really understandable for them. And it was really nice. It was really nice to hear. And as a small content creator, it's actually very hard at the start to make much money from this. So I used to sell these ebooks for within the region to £4 to £5. And for £5, essentially, you'd get a 30-page PDF document teaching you about antibiotics. And it was a very risky, like in my mind, it felt like a very risky move, but it was actually, it was, this is why I got so many nice comments from students, because it was just, it was a fraction of the price of what they were spending for in terms of textbooks, and they really liked the layout of my notes and found them really useful. So I guess before you start considering content creation, one of the main things to consider is, why do people actually spend time on social media? So what are you trying to, what angles should you go for when you start to make posts? So ultimately, what I say is, why do you spend time on social media? And quite often, a lot of people will tell me, I just want to have fun. I just want to keep my mind away from everything that's happened during the day. I probably had a busy day at work. I just want this sort of escape to have to enjoy myself, or see something quite useful. And that's why having producing content that's very interesting but also educational is very important. So what are some of the posts that did really well when I started to make content? So I started to make posts about how I got a first in pharmacy school. And this post was quite interesting because what I was talking about was all the things I did wrong when it came to studying, and how I changed those approaches, and started to use evidence-based approaches. So when I say all the things that I did wrong, quite often a lot of students would use things like highlighting, note-taking, or rereading material to learn a topic. And experts say that these are three of the worst ways in which you can revise and take in information, but people still do it today. So what I found was that when I started looking at the evidence, the reason why people still do this, despite it being such a poor way to study, is because as a lecturer myself and teachers, we don't actually learn what the best way to revise is. So there's actually a lot of studies that are out there. No one really revised it. So I started talking about how I changed my approach to pharmacy, studying for pharmacy school. And what I started to do is utilize something called active recall. And what that means is, every time I'd learn a lecture, I'd write down 10 or 15 questions from the lecture. So if I'm learning about the symptoms of pneumonia, I will say, list 3 symptoms of pneumonia. I'll write that question on the side. And then once we're going to treatments of pneumonia, what is the first line treatment of pneumonia? What is the second line treatment of pneumonia? I started writing those questions out. And at the end, rather than making notes, I've written out 15 questions. And if I can answer those questions, it means I've learned that information well. And if I can't, it means that I need to revisit the material until I can answer those questions. What you start to do when you start to do this process is you start to not passively just think you've absorbed that information because you wrote loads of notes, and you're actively trying to make your brain work hard to recall that information. And that's what really worked for me, doing much better when I was studying pharmacy. So that was what I shared on this post, and approximately over 25,000 people found this post useful and viewed this post. So that's some of the posts that I would make. And then some would be like humorous posts about the things that I will see at work. If one thing that I would say to anyone that's starting out in this space is, if you are going to make this post, make sure you show yourself, meaning don't portray yourself in a way that you're not. So portray yourself in a way, be yourself in these posts. People want to know about what you have to offer and why they should watch your content. So one thing that I started to do, which was quite interesting, and this is something that you could do very easily, is I started to do something called a day in my life as a hospital pharmacist. Started to make an episode, a day to day in my life as a hospital pharmacist, and people found that really interesting because one thing that you would know as a pharmacist, and you can tell me in the comments section as well, is that people really misunderstand what pharmacists can do. So particularly when you would see with the pharmacy fest in particular, sometimes I'd spend a lot of time looking at headlines from news sources. So let's say that I know I probably shouldn't be reading the comments of the Sun, but I'd look at the Sun putting a post about, well, you can now go to your pharmacist for 7 minor ailments, and then you'll see the comments to say, well, my pharmacists are useless, or they only what do they even do, or there's just this deep misunderstanding from not all but a lot of members in the public about what pharmacists can actually do. And this was a useful way for me to show that pharmacists are actually very capable healthcare professionals. And I'll show you some of the positive stories that I have from doing all of this content online. So I guess before I talk about the engagement that I had with YouTube, I could briefly say what we're planning to do in terms of MicroPharm now. So the plan is to continue to educate and entertain people online, continue to support trainee pharmacists and pharmacy students, and continue to work with pharmacy-related businesses like Locum to create free sessions for students. Now I want to talk to you about the work that I'm doing with YouTube and where it all came about from. So the first thing that I want to say is anyone here, I'm possibly not, but is anyone here visiting the Clinical Pharmacy Congress? Does everyone know about the Clinical Pharmacy Congress? Nope. Okay, so let me put a link in the chat because it's actually very nice to visit the Clinical Pharmacy Congress, particularly when it's your first time. So I'm gonna put a link. Tito does. Okay, so this is a link to the Clinical Pharmacy Congress. The Clinical Pharmacy Congress, it's a live conference in London. It's in London Excel. And over about probably more than 3,500 to 4,000 people will attend the Clinical Pharmacy Congress. And most of the people that attend are pharmacists. And then you've also got pharmacy technicians or employers, businesses, but it's free to attend. And it's a really great way for you to connect with other pharmacists, which we don't do a lot of. So to network with other pharmacists, and also just to learn from other pharmacists as well. So there's a lot of educational sessions. Again, all of them are for free. And this is where I'm going to be delivering a session with the head of health from YouTube. So the head of health was is called his name is Vishal. Vishal is the one that reached out to me when he first said, I've noticed what you're doing and I want you to attend a conference at YouTube. And about a year after that date, the pharmacy show was coming, and the pharmacy show pitched me an idea of saying that we'd like you to speak at the event. And I came back to them and said, I'd love to speak at the event, but would it be okay if I did a joint session with the head of YouTube Health? And they agreed to that. And they agreed to this before I even asked Vishal. And then I was like terrified, like Vishal's going to say no. So I went to Vishal and I said, Vishal, I know you're based in London. There's a pharmacy show in Birmingham. It's huge. It'll be huge for YouTube. Would you like to speak with me at the event? And he agreed to speak with me at the event. And this is our second talk that we're doing together. So we're going to be doing a talk about YouTube Health and why it's valuable to have pharmacists as content creators. And there was something quite exciting that he's invited me to at the end of this month, and I completely forgot to put it in the slides. But he's also doing, so a lot of my background is making sure antibiotics are used appropriately in hospital. So I worked for 4 years as an antimicrobial pharmacist, and he is doing, there's a conference at the House of Lords about antimicrobial resistance and why it's really important to society today. And then he's invited me to this event there, and I said, I've got this 4-year history as an antimicrobial pharmacist. I would love to come to it. And I was also trying to highlight that it would be nice for me to be more engaged than just someone watching the event. And he said, I'd love to have you on the panel. So I'm the only pharmacist on the panel talking about the importance of antimicrobial resistance at the House of Lords, which is quite surreal. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. So the main thing is, if you haven't looked into the Clinical Pharmacy Congress, it would be great for you to look into it. And if you can attend, it would be great, because we're doing a talk about why YouTube is even bothering in the healthcare space, and what the value is for YouTube to be doing this. So what kind of things do I post on the channel? So there's a few kind of things. One is the educational posts that I do. So what I do is I'll go to we have two family-owned community pharmacists, community pharmacies. We actually have within my immediate family. So talking about my cousins, there's actually, my brother's a pharmacist, and we've actually got 12 pharmacists within the family. Not my direct, so I've got about 11 cousins from my mum and dad's side that are pharmacists. So we really like the pharmacy profession. So we have 2 community pharmacies that are family owned. So it means that I can spend some time there to record some videos of medications and then talk about how medications work. So I'd film these videos, and then my background will the background audio would be me explaining how the medication works in very simple terms. The reason why these videos have been really beneficial is healthcare professionals find them interesting, particularly nurses and doctors who really struggle with pharmacology. And then on top of that, on top of healthcare professionals finding it interesting, patients find it interesting, because they say, I just got prescribed atorvastatin. I have no idea how it works. So I make sure all the information, one thing that is very important is making sure all the information that you have is with reputable resources. So I always use either NICE, or I'll use the NHS website. So I would always say information that's readily available on the NHS website, which means that if people are ever asking me the question of where did you get this information from, it's directly available for patients on the NHS website. And I'll talk about how these medications work. Other things I would do is I'd talk about some pharmacy insights. So these are really things that people would find interesting if they're looking into the profession, or things that people would find interesting if they're in the profession or they're looking to switch from one sector to another. So I talk about how much money does a junior pharmacist actually make working for the NHS, or what does a hospital pharmacist actually do? There's some other videos that I make in terms of preparing for hospital pharmacy interviews. And that's quite interesting because, like I said to you, my training year and my strength was community pharmacy. And I wanted to do both. I wanted to work in community pharmacy and hospital pharmacy. So it was actually quite daunting for me to go for that interview with a community pharmacy background. So I actually teach people what they should expect. And then I talk about my experiences as a type 1 diabetic. So I've lived with type 1 diabetes since 2001, so over 20 years. And I talk about my experiences. What's the tech like? What's the currently in terms of diabetes management? How does an insulin pump actually work? How does a continuous glucose monitor actually work? And this is interesting not only for people that are in the pharmacy space, but also for diabetics that want to learn, or they're going to start on a new insulin pump. I'll explain to them what it actually feels like when you're putting the pump on. So in terms of making content, I want to go through everything that comes from idea to uploading. So the first thing is I think of an idea. What would actually be interesting? And I think maybe people want to know how ramipril works. I know ramipril is commonly prescribed for hypertension, so a lot of people will be on ramipril. Let me put a script together about how ramipril works. So I'll start to write a script, and that script will look at making the process as easy as possible. So how can I explain how ramipril works in the easiest possible way? So let's see if I can pull up a script. Just bear with me. I might be able to. Okay. Okay, so I've got one for ramiprils here. So this is what my script would look like. Ramipril is a medication that's often used to treat high blood pressure. It can be which can be thought of like water running through a garden hose. When the pressure is high, when the pressure in the hose is too high, it can start to damage the garden hose and it can cause it to leak. Similarly, high blood pressure can cause too much strain on your blood vessels and your heart. Ramipril works by relaxing the blood vessels, making them wider, which is like turning the nozzle to a wider setting on the hose, decreasing the pressure inside. And this makes it easier for your heart to pump blood around your body. And it's used for conditions like heart failure. And it also improves your survival after a heart attack. In these cases, by reducing the pressure, it helps the heart work more efficiently and reduces the risk of further damage. So this is essentially, I tried to provide some, I essentially tried to provide an analogy where I make that understanding process very simple, and I make it simple for healthcare professionals and make it also very simple for the patients as well. And then after that, I would start to film. This is very technical. You can use your phone. And then I would edit, and then I would finally upload. So this is a video that I did with regards to why to join us at the pharmacy show. So the organizers of the pharmacy show wanted me to put together a video. So what are three things that I learned from this entire process? Like, why did I bother doing it as a pharmacist? Well, the impact that you can have. So if you're considering, just asking you the question, when you're working in your day-to-day as a pharmacist, how many patients would you speak to on a normal day? Just put it in the chat, or you can even put just a rough number of how many patients you'd speak to. Okay, 50 minimum. Anyone else? I'm just going to pull something up while you're doing that. Anyone else? So I'm just going to give you figures from one of the platforms that I teach people on. So on TikTok, for example, in the last 7 days, I have managed to teach or have views of 67,000 people. So that's when you start to realize the impact that you're having online can be huge. So there's quite an interesting story that I had was I was teaching a session for first-year students, first-year pharmacy students, and after the session finished, one of the students came up to me and said, I watched your video of why you recommend pharmacy in 2023, and I picked pharmacy because of your video. So that's the kind of impact that you can have online. And leading on to that, there's actually two experiences that I want to speak about. And there's one experience that actually came from yesterday. So this comment at the top was a comment from yesterday. So I made two things. I made a video about how to prepare for a hospital pharmacy interview. And there was one person at work that said to me, I actually watched your video of how to prepare for a hospital pharmacy interview before I actually applied for this job. Then I got this job. And there was someone that sent me a comment yesterday to say, I attended your recent webinar about hospital pharmacy interviews, which I delivered last month. And it helped me to get a hospital pharmacy job. So I'm grateful that I found MicroPharm, and thank you. So the impact that you can have, I've never met this person, Elizabeth, in my life, but the impact that you can have online is huge. And over the past year, just with YouTube alone, 1 million people have watched the videos. So I created this thing, I created this entire thing to help people, and the amount of people that you can help online is unmatched. And then I have had like these beautiful engagements and things that have come from this. So last year, the BPSA, which is of course the British Pharmaceutical Student Association, reached out to me to talk about my experiences with type 1 diabetes, and I taught pharmacy students in Aston University about my experiences living with diabetes and what the tech actually looks like. So you start to create a community of pharmacy students and trainee pharmacists that really are grateful for the work that you do. So what did I learn from this entire process? Well, I learned how to video edit, which is something that I didn't know from everything that I've studied with regards to pharmacy. I learned the importance of photo editing. I then had to create a limited business because I was starting to teach and provide these courses. I started learning about the importance of social media, impacting millions of people every year. And there's just so many skills that you can learn from that entire process. So hopefully you found that insightful. And now I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you do have any at the end or now. Does anyone have any questions?
Do you still like do any form of locum work in the community pharmacy, or it's just academics and the content you create?
Yeah, so I stopped locuming about 2 years ago, and the reason why I stopped locuming about 2 years ago is I just ran out of time. So it was just my time with the business. One thing that I can say is I've helped. Oh, the lights have gone off. One thing that I can say is I've helped probably about 500 trainee pharmacists start to become local pharmacists with Locator Locum over the past 2 years as a result. And I think the impact that I'm doing from that outweighs me going into a community pharmacy as a locum.
Yeah,
probably, I'd probably do one every 2 to 3 months with the family.
yeah. Okay. What I was asking is, I was just wondering if you also had like any form of support, like contents that kinds of bridges. Okay, one of the reasons why I opted to attend today, for example, was because I saw your background, hospital, and I'm also like, that's my background. And because I was interested in also local men and, academics kind of. So I just saw that you had what I was looking out for kind of. And so one of the reasons why I asked to come in today. So I wanted to see how you were able to balance that.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you talking in terms of balancing academia and hospital, or balancing academia, hospital, and locuming, or?
Yes, so like say.
Oh, you just cut off.
Is
Your
was
sound
that?
just cut off. Yeah, it's back now.
Yes, yes. So you know, because I'm in my early career too. So I just wanted to have that balance. Yeah.
Yeah, so it can be quite tough, and it's very hard for me to give generic advice on that. But one thing I would say is there's a few things. The first thing is creating boundaries um, in terms of being in the workplace. So one of the most important things is um, in terms of communication, you can, whilst I'm at the hospital, my main form of communication is with I have a work phone. I know people within the hospital that use their personal phone to be in touch with members outside of their work hours. That's one thing that I have really a strict sort of line with regards to the time that I spend at work is the time that I spend at work. If you are doing overtime whilst being in the hospital pharmacy, I think it's very important. I'm very passionate about this, but I think it's very important for that time to be accounted for. I know a lot of hospital pharmacists that do not account for overtime that they do, and I don't think that's a healthy way to go about with the role. So the good thing about working in a hospital pharmacy is you have a line manager that you can have a discussion with. So I'd always have a discussion surrounding any overtime that I'm doing to make sure that it's accounted for. Once you start accounting for the overtime, that's when people expect less of you when it comes to overtime, because if they have to give your hours back, they don't want to. So that's one thing. The other thing is with regards to academia. Academia is quite challenging. I think particularly when you start in academia, they start to develop a workload for you to see what you can do. Once you come to the stage where you feel like the workload that you currently have, it fulfills the time that you have within the university. I think it's very important to have that discussion to say, with the current workload that I have, I find it challenging, but at the same time, I feel like I can do it within my work hours, and not to take any more following on from that. That's one of the things I've had. It's still challenging, nonetheless. It's still challenging. One thing that it may be worth discussing, because people often forget the basics, is if your base hours are 50 to 55 hours a week, you're already over the limit in terms of what a normal person does with regards to work. So you're predisposing yourself for burnout.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
no worries at all.
Yeah.
How often do you post on YouTube in order to stay consistent? It's very hard, because now I probably post once a month in terms of long form video, but in terms of short form video, probably a few times a week. The one thing that I'd say, if you want to start out in this, is pick never look at someone else telling you have to post once a week. Pick a frequency that works for you. If you can only post once every 2 months, post once every 2 months. Don't put your if you go in with the mindset that there's no point me posting once every 2 months, you'll never get started. So if you're ever considering it, pick a schedule that works for you, and then once you're able to maintain that schedule, then challenge yourself a bit and say, okay, once every 2 weeks now, because I've managed to do this once every month for 6 months, for example.
Thank you.
No worries at all.
Does anyone else have any other questions for you here before we wrap up this evening? Maybe whenever everybody's just having a wee think of their questions, if there's any more, I just want to say, Yasir, thank you so much for delivering our session tonight. I think your journey is so incredible, because obviously I come from a marketing background, and I fully appreciate how much time and effort goes into creating a 1-minute video for Instagram or TikTok, and whenever you're delivering it with such high quality, it's really, really impressive. So thank you so much for sharing your insights and your work with YouTube for us all here tonight. It was brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it becomes basically 70% of everything I do seems to be marketing, and 30% is pharmacy. Now that you start creating content, it becomes less and less pharmacy over time, because you have to learn so much. But yeah, I also appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you very much. Well, if nobody else has any other questions, we'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your Monday evening. But thank you so much for everyone for joining us, and thank you again, Yasir.
Okay, thank you everyone. Take care.
No bother. Right, see you later. Have a good evening. Bye now. Thank you.